Yeah.
I'll
Oh, okay. Yeah. Let me start sharing my screen. Done. Yeah. And then we'll get started in 10 minutes.
okay.
All right. Whoa. Oh no. Okay. I can do this.
Hey, Kevin, can you see the Chrome window right now that has the Chicago Ruby logo?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
And I'm going to maximize it. Let me know if you can still see it. Can you still see it?
Looks great.
Great. All right. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. You got your, is your clicker work? Or,
I don't have a clicker. It's
okay.
just gonna be,
Through slides here.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. I'm gonna mute myself until like 6:20 and then we will get started. Okay. Now, where?
So that's how I arranged it.
Oh, okay. Yes. Then I mute. Hello. Can people online hear me? We are about to get started. Yeah. Alrighty. Let me just find my mouse. Oh no. Oh, I found it. Okay. All right. Welcome to our August 2026 Chicago Ruby Meetup. As a reminder, we aim to meet every first Wednesday of the month, except for today. Today is the second Wednesday of the month. Yeah. All right. We want to thank Workforce and the folks of Workforce for letting us use their lovely space and for being such a gracious host. With that, I will hand this mic off to Travis to tell us a little bit more about Workforce. Or Matt. Hello.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. Just wanted to say a little bit about Workforce and what we do. We sell payroll software, HR software, scheduling, time and attendance. We don't have any jobs posted publicly at the moment, but would like to let anyone know if you're interested in a new job you're looking, please come up to any one of us because we're always interviewing, always interested in talented, ambitious people. So please raise your hand if you work here. So you come find me or any of these people and just give them your information, and we'd love to chat with you later about it. I like working here because it's really heavy on Ruby on Rails. We're using all the latest stack of Ruby on Rails that we can. We're not writing much JavaScript or anything. Small team, I think, is about 6 devs in Chicago. We are headquartered in Australia. So probably and we have an office in the UK, so maybe like 30, 40 engineers total, but you're mostly just interacting with us. And I love it because you get a ton of ownership over everything you do, get big projects, you get no micromanagement, you get to decide how things are built. So if that sounds appealing, come talk to me or anyone else here, and we'd love to chat with you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Next slide. Okay. I do want to take a moment and talk about something serious, which is our code of conduct. It is Chicago Ruby's goal to make this a welcoming, respectful, and inclusive space where everyone can learn, share ideas, and connect with the Ruby community. We're all here because we love Ruby and the community around it. So let's keep Mina Swan, Matt's is nice, and so we are nice in mind. Please be respectful of the space and especially of the people in it. Our speakers have taken the time to prepare presentations and have put themselves out there to share their ideas with us. Absolutely okay if you have a different perspective, just do so thoughtfully and constructively. Yeah, let's make this space where people feel welcome to share, learn, ask questions, and participate. If you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to me or any of the Chicago Ruby organizers. Okay. Yeah. From the Chicago Ruby organizers, myself, Anton, Dan, Josh, Jonathan, we want to thank you all for coming today, joining us today. All right. Okay, some housekeeping and announcements. First, join us for our future events. We will post our events on meetup.com as well as on Slack. That QR code goes to our meetup.com/Chicago Ruby site. Okay, speaking of Slack, we have our own channel within the Ruby Central Community Slack, #ChicagoRuby, as well as the #Ruby channel within Chicago Tech Slack. These Slack channels will be a place for us to connect, as well as where Chicago Ruby organizers, such as myself, will post any announcements prior to our events. We've created QR codes for invitations to the Slack channels that I mentioned. Reach out to me if you need an invite to any of these Slack channels. Okay. Missed a previous event or want to rewatch a talk? We have our 2025 and 2026 event recordings posted on our YouTube channel at Chicago Ruby Meetups. Feel free to give our channel a like and subscribe. Okay. Interested in hosting? Chicago Ruby is on the lookout for organizations willing to host our monthly meetings. If interested, reach out to myself or any of the Chicago Ruby organizers, and we can give you more info. Okay. We want to hear from you. Interested in speaking? We'd love to hear from you. Feel free to reach out to me for more information on speaking at ChicagoRuby. If you are interested in speaking but aren't sure what topic to choose, or if there's a subject you'd like to see covered, we've put together a list of potential topics that members of the community are eager to learn more about. That QR code right there will send you to that list. Feel free to add any of your ideas onto that Google spreadsheet. For moderation purposes, this Google spreadsheet is open for comments only. Admins like myself will add ideas from the comments onto the list. All right. ChicagoRuby is proudly supported by GoTo Inc. GoTo Inc. is a UX, UI, and engineering talent as a service provider for Ruby-powered organizations. We're incredibly grateful for the support GoTo Inc. has given our community. If you'd like to learn more about what they do, be sure to connect with Anton, who's in attendance today. All right. If you're interested in ChicagoRuby, either by hosting a different type of event, like a hack night, board game night, lightning talks, collaboration with other groups, or through a sponsorship, we are super down. Reach out to me for more info on sponsorships or hosting events. All right, almost there. Fun stuff, upcoming conferences. Rails World will be in Austin, Texas, September 23rd to 24th. There'll be some really awesome speakers. I personally know one of the MCs of Rails World. I hear she's pretty cool. She is me. Well, please be there. Yeah. Anyway, the second SF Ruby will be held November 10th through 12th. There will be a lot of startup demos, great talks and workshops. Gary Tan of Y Combinator will be one of the keynotes. Should be really cool. You all should check it out. All right, last one. Join us next month in September. Beyond Finance will be hosting us our September meetup, Wednesday, September 9th, 6 p.m. to 8:30. Tess Griffin will be joining us in person to talk about learning empathy from Pokemon Blue, explaining the infamous Signo bug and what lessons we can learn from it. Also, Chris Fung from Gusto will be joining us remotely to talk about Stop Fighting Ruby Internationalization. Message format is all you need. Yeah, join us next month. With that, I will hand the baton to our first speaker, Kevin Murphy. Give me a second while I stop sharing my screen. Yeah. In the meantime, please give him a hand while I figure out tech. And how do I make this big again? Whoa.
Right over here.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Yes. Okay, I'm gonna mute myself.
All right, Michelle, before I get started, can you just make sure, can you just give me a confirmation that we're good?
We're good.
Okay, great. All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for coming. I am so excited to have you all here joining us together to start your employment at Hours Unlimited. You are incredibly lucky to be joining us on our journey at this critical moment, and it is very exciting. My name is Kevin, I'm the CTO, and before we get started, I just want to bring up one of the more exciting things that I feel that really gets me going when I come to work every day. It's of course, our official company conundrum, which is what will you do with all the time in the world? And now that you've decided to join us here at Hours Unlimited, I can tell you a little bit about what you'll be doing. You'll be spending your time unlocking the potential to add business value for users, unconstrained by the hours of the day. Now, of course, this will take a lot of dedicated work from all of you to make this happen. And in order to facilitate that, we work on a strict 996 working hour system. So we'll be seeing a lot of each other. And it's only through this strict dedication that you will have the honor to help shepherding in the future, which is, of course, computers being able to engage in all of humanity's greatest artistic pursuits. So, thank you all for helping us to save the world from the toil that comes from blank page syndrome and critical thinking, and enter a future where anyone can access all of the world's knowledge from anywhere in the world. Now, unfortunately, we're not there yet. And as a result, we believe that this kind of groundbreaking paradigm shift can only be achieved through strict in-office work. In fact, this will be so difficult to do that achieving this kind of remote collaboration will only be possible well after achieving true AGI. AGI is, of course, what we're all working towards, and by our latest prediction, we think it may be in about 3 months. But, the timelines move. No matter what, it certainly is not right now, and as a result, we have a hard rule: no remote work and no exceptions. Now, all of our meetings take place virtually, and this is critical because this allows me to attend any meeting at any time with a moment's notice from wherever I am, which may be Austin or San Francisco or Miami. You see, I need to be able to meet with luminaries in these tech hubs because let's be honest, these VC checks, they're not going to write themselves. But that is on our roadmap. Now, because of that, I'm rarely in the office, which is why I'm conducting this onboarding session remotely here. But if you do want to get in touch with me, fear not. If you want to request an opportunity to speak with me, you can do so through my agent assistant, which is pre-installed on all of your work machines. It saves me so much time and gives you constant access to me. If my agent assistant can't answer your request to its satisfaction, then it'll schedule a meeting for us to talk at a time of my agent's choosing. And just remember, we're all in the office, all in this together. Now, you might note we're not on the same floor with the rest of our colleagues for this session, and that's because we rent this room just for these onboarding sessions. Our floor that we're actually working on contains no meeting rooms whatsoever. It's a full open floor plan for maximum collaboration where we encourage you to sit wherever you'd like. But don't get too comfortable with your setup because every desk is a hot desk, so every day you'll be working somewhere else with new equipment, with new people sitting near you. And we believe this allows us to be maximally nimble in such a collaborative environment. Now, all communication still needs to take place on a company-approved virtual platform. And that's critical for our business because our agents are first-class citizens here. So they need to be able to participate in all conversations that are going on. But we remain on site for the collaborative gains. We believe that the excitement we generate in this office can't be replicated anywhere else, except for Austin or San Francisco or Miami sometimes. Now, I'm sure you all know what we do, but just to make sure we're all on the same page, I want to take a moment to talk about how we add value to the world. Through our work, we open up unlimited hours to power business operations. But we don't minimize the amount of time that humans spend powering business operations. We want to maintain a strict human touch to enable a world where computers have access to all of human consciousness. But we want to do so in a way that doesn't reduce our total addressable market. Now, that may seem contradictory to you, but I assure you, if it's not, and if you need some justification for that, I encourage you to re-review your generous equity grants that accompanied your offer letter and to look at our valuation, which is very real and very much based on the real value we're providing to the world. But it's more than just the work that we do that we provide to society. What we are offering to folks is promise and potential. We're providing optimism. And we do that by leveraging our investments, utilizing best-in-class computing power backed by privatized world-class energy sources, and we make that available to users through the use of tokens. Tokens, which is very much different from real money. And given a token and a question, we provide answers. Now, are they the right answers? Well, that's up to our users to decide. We maintain zero liability toward the veracity of our answers. But remember, it's not really the answers that are important. It's more than that. We're providing promise and potential and optimism. And we do that through our flagship product, Powerful Machine. Now, for far too long, we as an industry have limited ourselves in our product and company names by dropping vowels, making ourselves appear smaller than we really are and not taking up the space that we truly should be taking up. No longer. In this brave new world where we're adding value, we're adding consonants to our names. Now, I'm told all of you are joining our math and numbers division, and that's terrific. Together, we'll redefine the importance of numerals, and we'll do so together one prompt at a time. Of course, we build Powerful Machine with Powerful Machine, but we couldn't do it without hiring every single one of you so that the computer can build a better computer, thanks to all the humans who do it like you. But that's not as fun of a story. Let's talk about the computer and let's get into a demo of how Powerful Machine works. And we'll do so with an example that you might encounter in your time at the Math and Numbers division. I want to start by introducing you to your new constant pairing partner, PowerPrompt. PowerPrompt is pre-installed on all of your work machines, and with some brief configuration, it automatically knows your name. So let's give it a little prompt here to ask it to do something mathy. Let's have it return the slope of a line. PowerPrompt immediately returns exactly what you asked for. It may not be what you wanted, but it is what you asked for. Technically correct, the best kind of correct. And now it's up to you to iterate on this, and come up with what it is you're actually looking for. See, we don't want to return the slope of a line. We want to calculate the slope of a line. And PowerPrompt, it can do that too. Now, we want you to continue making small changes to this prompt and make them as small as possible so you can understand what it is that's driving the change that you see in what PowerPrompt is doing. So I'm going to take a step back and be a little slow here. And I'm intentionally going to start at the beginning. And I want to specify what the name of this method should be and nothing more. Nothing else changes to my prompt. I can see that PowerPrompt takes that in and applies my suggestion to the name of the prompt, name of the method, excuse me. And this is great. And I can continue on going through this, giving PowerPrompt more and more information until I get what I want. But you might find yourself from time to time in a bit of a negative feedback loop where things just aren't going your way. And if that's the case, don't be afraid to start over again. It's real easy with PowerPrompt, and PowerPrompt is happy to forget. You might argue it never remembered to begin with. So let's give it a more detailed prompt for what we're looking for how to calculate the slope of a line. And given all this information, PowerPrompt chews on that and returns us back some math. That's probably how you calculate the slope of a line. But there is one thing I noticed that isn't exactly what we wanted. The inputs that this method provides, the parameters, are XY coordinates, and we wanted a point object. So we need to be specific about what it is we're looking for inputs and outputs of this method. So let's be more clear about that. And we say we want an actual point object and what that point object has available to it. And PowerPrompt takes in that feedback and updates how the method works. And at this point, we have ourselves a viable implementation for calculating the slope of a line. But I encourage you not to stop here. I want you to step back from it and think about what other options you have available to you. Think about different design patterns you could use, maybe some different language features, some different way that people might be interacting with this code, or just have PowerPrompt do it. It'll spit back something else and like, here's a bunch of math. I don't know. Maybe it works. You all in the math and numbers division can tell us. But it's not for me. So I'm willing to go back to what we had before, and PowerPrompt, happy to do that. Now, that being said, we're not totally done here. There is one more scenario that we need to encounter, and I happen to know what it is because, yeah, maybe I could belong in the math and numbers division. And that is the slope of a vertical line. That's undefined. That's a special case, and we need to tell PowerPrompt how to account for that. So we take care of that. PowerPrompt adds a little guard clause in here, and we're good to go. Incredible, right? Powerful Machine handled this implementation all by itself. Could you even imagine writing that by hand in 2026? No thanks. Not anymore. But we're not done. I want to also introduce you to the rest of your team, Powerful Machine Rumble. I'm sure you've seen the press releases, maybe some of you are in the beta. This is our set of autonomous agents. We can give it a bit more of a complicated problem to solve. So let's give it an entire feature. Let's ask it to develop an entire dashboard. And while it's going through and chewing on that, I want to introduce you to a bunch of documentation we've written to help support Rumble in how it handles every single one of its prompts. We have them stored in a set of markdown files, and the first is called background. And what we have in here are qualifications that we expect powerful machine to have to complete a task. So these are things like what kind of experience we want it to consider it to have, and what sort of philosophies and systems it knows how to use, particular technology, and how it thinks about solving particular problems with given sets of technology. We also have a motivation file. This goes a step further and talks about what drives the agent to achieve its goals. Right? So we want it to be concerned with the entire software development lifecycle and be interested in the design of their code beyond just the delivery of the actual ask, right? We also want to prompt it to do the impossible, which is not just write code that already exists elsewhere, even though it's so tempting to do so. We also have a guardrails file. And these are important instructions that absolutely must be followed. So these are things like making sure that secret values that probably only came to its attention via a prompt from the user don't make it into source code control. We want to make sure that all of our code that we've written actually works. We don't want to deprive our human developers the opportunity to read this wonderful code from Rumble before it goes into production. And don't worry about this last one, it's not a very interesting story. We also have a preferences file. This is a little squishier. These are standards that we like to live by, but where some variability is possible. So these are things where we explain like what kinds of tests we like to write and how we like them to look, the way that we communicate the work that we're doing with our coworkers and how we should include information, and the way that we like to produce code changes that we can then review and what the review process looks like. And doing all of this gives us a great understanding about what it's like. Excuse me, sorry. This notification tells us that Rumble is ready to go, and this is great news. You'll get used to seeing this all the time, especially on the open floor plan. And the reason we have this notification and we have it set up this way is because we want you to stop whatever you're doing and start reviewing whatever Rumble came back with. It's important that we do this quickly. And the reason for that is because there are probably changes that are going to need to be made, likely as a result of some failure in the prompt that the user provided. And the quicker we are at starting that process, the quicker that code gets into production, and we've reduced the cycle time where that code's just sitting around not doing anything for us. Now, there's also a technical reason why we want to review this code quickly. And that's because the context, the set of instructions and decisions that the agent used and documented when it was generating this code, we store that to disk, but we only have that available for a short period of time. And then we get rid of it to make space for new prompts. Once Rumble has produced a change set, we are so confident that it is going to be that close to ready for production that we also put those agents into something called review mode. And in review mode, we limit the amount of compute power that's available to it. And that's because we want to prioritize any new prompts. So our agents that are in review mode need to have their review done quickly so it has access to its context, and it needs to be clear so we make sure that it can handle all of the things it needs to do given its limited compute power in review mode. So let's go ahead and look at what Rumble came back with. We got ourselves a nice tidy little diff here. And let's specifically look at some of the code in one of the files here and talk about how we want to review this code that Rumble has generated. The most important thing that I can suggest to you is that you provide clear and direct feedback. Tell Rumble exactly what it is you want and how you want it to be done. This is critical because Rumble is going to take in this feedback and immediately push a new commit with its best interpretation of what you're looking to do. Consider this another prompt that you want to be very clear about what you're looking for. You also need to specify if something absolutely needs to happen or is just like something to try to fit in, right? So for example, here, this is Ruby, and we can define as many statements as we want on a single line that are, delineated by a semicolon. And it just so happens that as a reviewer here, we might prefer to have them on separate lines, but we absolutely don't have to. This works perfectly fine. So by including this optional tag at the front of our comment, we are telling Rumble that it doesn't absolutely need to be done. And remember, Rumble's in review mode and has limited compute power to be able to actually address all of these comments. So it's important for Rumble to know which ones it needs to prioritize. We also want to tell Rumble when it did something that we like. So here we can see that we used the slope method that we paired with power prompt on, and it used that to generate our dashboard here. And that's awesome. We very much want it to be using the code that's already in the system. And by giving Rumble this feedback, that is then pushed back into the training corpus that's used for all of Powerful Machine. And that's incredibly important because it creates a flywheel by which we then have the system better understand how it is we like to work and what it is we expect of it. I also encourage you to ask questions of Rumble and the code that it's producing, right? So here we're curious about the charting library it uses, and when we ask a question, Rumble will immediately retrieve its context and reply back with an answer that will justify its choices and share any resources used so you can get up to its level technically. It might highlight other approaches that it took and explain the trade-offs that went into the decision that it made. And now, listen, I understand that for many of you, Hours Unlimited is just one stop on your journey that is the entirety of your career. And even more of you are going to spend less time in the math and numbers division because Hours Unlimited has so many other wonderful opportunities available to you. But I want you to keep in mind that whether you're here for a short amount of time or a longer amount of time, everything that we've talked about here is entirely relevant to the work that you do because we're all humans. When we were working with Power Prompt, I want you to consider all of those things and incorporate them into the process you use to actively develop, no matter what tooling you use to develop. No matter what you're using, start by breaking the blank page and build something to your initial understanding. It may not be exactly what you want, but it's a step getting you to where you need to go. And by having something you can react to, you can then iterate on it and build upon it as you begin to refine a better understanding of what it is you're even looking to accomplish and how you want to do it. As you're iterating, make small changes so you can understand what is driving the behavior impact that you're seeing on your system while you make changes to your code. And if things aren't going your way, it's okay to start over again. Not all code that you write needs to end up in production to be valuable. Any code that you throw away that gets you closer to where you need to end up going still served a purpose. I encourage you to be specific in your inputs and outputs and API design. And once you have something that is working, take a minute to think about what sort of other options you have available to you. Right? Is this an opportunity to experiment with something new? Is this a chance to try a style of writing code that one of your coworkers is interested in? Again, it doesn't need to end up in production. It still adds value even if you let it go. You are building up your knowledge of information that will help you for the rest of your career. Of course, highlight edge cases and consider what you are or aren't going to do with them. And ultimately, give yourself the same grace and freedom that someone might provide to a prompt. You yourself are worth that. When we talked about Rumble, we talked about a bunch of the documentation that we put together to help it when it was prompted. And all of that documentation maps to company expectations. Our background file, this is a job description. When was the last time you considered what your job description is? Even if you pulled up whatever was available when you applied for whatever job you're in right now, it's probably pretty different from what it is you actually do day to day. So I encourage you to think about writing a job description for you in your role today. Not to replace yourself with a computer or another human, but so you can demonstrate to yourself, if no one else, what value you bring to the team. Our motivation file, these are career goals. Right? Now that we have our fresh job description that demonstrates where we are today, career goals, chart a course for tomorrow, and by having them written out, we are more aware of them ourselves, and by being able to easily enumerate them, we can start to engage management to see what opportunity there is to work on these goals. And we can be very clear about how we can or cannot achieve any of these given what the work is we do today. Our guardrails file is the perhaps bland but incredibly important policies and procedures. And while I encourage you to be involved in the generation of these and upkeep of them, ultimately lean on management to make sure that these exist, that they make sense for your organization, that they're updated, and that they're enforced appropriately. And lastly, for our documentation, our preferences are our squishy team norms, things that we've very clearly written out so that there is tacit agreement amongst the team that this is how we prefer to work. And this is important not only for the team, but also for people who might be interacting with the team, or for people who might be looking to join the team, or for people that do join the team. And by writing it down, we make it explicit, not something that needs to be guessed at. Right? No one's going to like doing things a certain way that they're used to, only to be told, oh, that's not how we do things here, when they could have been told from the start how we do things here. If you do it for a computer, do it for your team. And the same is true for code review. I talked about how when Rumble has produced a change set, it's incredibly important that we review the code quickly because there are probably going to be changes. And the faster we get that cycle kicked off, the less time it takes for that code to get in production. And none of that has anything to do with how the code was written. Even the technical limitations that we talked about are just as relevant. Our short-term memory, it's only around for a short period of time, and then it's gone. Once we have produced some work, our focus goes elsewhere. At least I know for me, I don't push up a change set that's waiting for review and just constantly refresh to see if anyone's commented on it. I have also moved on to new work, and my attention goes there. So when you're reviewing some code, help the authors get back into the mindset that they were in when they wrote the code and help make it as easy as possible for them to address your feedback by making it clear and direct, by telling someone if you feel absolutely certain that this needs to happen or that you're interested in having a conversation with something, or if you can get to this would be great. Tell people that they did a good job. Don't let perfectly good code scroll by in your review. Highlight it, comment on it, and celebrate it. People don't know otherwise. And of course, ask questions, but I encourage you to not only ask questions that will help you be more familiar with the specific code that's under review, and just so that you feel comfortable and confident with supporting it. That's important as well, right? But if you're treating code review just as a quality gate, you're leaving a lot of value on the table. Code review in and of itself is an important process that has value regardless of what happens to the code that's being reviewed. It's an invitation to a discussion. It's an opportunity for all of us to learn from each other and better understand technical topics and process topics. It's a chance for us to build a shared understanding with our coworkers, to better understand how we are similar and different in how we work together, what sorts of things that our coworkers like to think about, what trade-offs are on the top of their mind, what stylistic choices they like to make, how they feel about the languages and frameworks that we use, what sort of things they're working on in their own career goals, and how we can help support that through the review process. And by engaging in reviews in this way, we help to form deep working relationships. And that is critical for our careers. Because look, ultimately, Rumble doesn't have your back. Power Prompt doesn't know what you're asking it. It's just guessing the best way to respond. Any LLM is only as good as the person prompting it. And Hours Unlimited as a company isn't actually trying to save you time, even though that might happen. It actually has other goals. And given all that information, it's important that we as individuals take care of each other. We've been so willing as an industry to invest money and attention and time and documentation to improve these automated development tools. But why haven't we been willing to do that for ourselves? Nowadays, you might hear a bunch of choruses about how the things that we're doing are beneficial for the computer and also the human operator, and therefore it's a win-win. And I agree, that's great. But why did it only tip the scales to us doing it when it also benefited the computer? We're enough, and we need to take care of each other. And look, I know it's a weird time out there, professionally, personally, politically. A great number of people don't feel that great a great amount of the time. And you might feel that it's hard to see instances of people caring about each other. You might not feel cared for. Trust me, I get it. But if you take one thing away from this onboarding session, other than congratulations on the new job, I hope you remember that someone cares about you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Kevin.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. Up to you if you are open to any questions or feedback. Yeah.
Yeah, if anyone
Otherwise,
has anything they wanted to chat about, they can find me online later. Yes, that's
okay.
good.
Okay. Yeah.
Cool.
Sounds good. Yeah. Then we are going to take a 10-15 minute bathroom break while the next speaker gets set up. But yeah, thank you so much for coming.
No, thank you
Thank
all
you.
for having me.
Okay, so I'm in the meeting and HDMI would help. No. Like, there's more magic here than I thought. Let's see. All right.
Such a tiny mic. I don't want to.
Oh, okay. Is that connected to it then? Or I've got my mic coming through here if you want, but
Oh, it's up YouTube. Yeah.
okay, great.
Yeah.
All right.
DJI.
Okay.
Yeah. It can find your device. Yeah, because it was a process for it to find.
Oh.
Not the microphone, the TV actually. Yeah, it took us a hot second to find. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Can you just do HDMI input or okay? Give me 1 second.
Oh, now it's working.
Oh, it just works.
I don't understand it. This is not my TV. Yeah, I'm like, oh no. It just works.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. And is it showing up on the Zoom meeting from your side?
No, you need to share.
I thought I did. Let me do it again.
Oh, you are sharing.
Okay.
Yeah, now I see it. Okay. And then you want to test the mic real quick?
Yeah. Let me do that to my. I'm sorry. Do you already? So I should do it to my computer.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah. Oh, thanks. Oh, I thought you said that like we'd met before, but maybe we have. Yeah. What's your name? Gary. Gary, nice to meet you, man. All right. What's the?
Yeah, we'll get started at like 7:10. So if you wanna.
We got time.
Yeah.
But what's the name of the mic device?
We use DJI.
Okay, I don't see it. See, like here. Oh, I have my mic on for my computer. Should I just do that, or would that be too low quality? You think?
If you're willing to sit there, yeah. But if you wanted to walk around,
Like, you're just stand like everyone's sitting.
I know. Yeah. See.
Yeah, I can. Do I need to do a pairing thing on this? Is this? Do I hold this or?
So it's already on, and then
Let me just try that.
yeah, because it's also not my mic.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
No,
what I'm like.
there we go. I think this is it, right? This one, KD.
I don't think that's it. I'm pretty sure it's called DJI.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I can grab Untitled because it's technically. Do you mind if I?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, it's green. That means it should. When it's green and blue, it should be
trying to find. Yeah, TGI.
There we go.
There you go.
Yeah. Her.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and then your Zoom settings. Yeah.
Okay, test. Hello. Good? Okay, great. All right. Cool.
Yeah,
Great. Well, go grab some water.
Oh. Yeah. I assume.
And then I even the next day, I think it's so annoying. You can't even be advantage. Sounds like
Really Chicago office, huh? With the train right there. Do you work here?
So
Okay.
before the pandemic, I was doing some consulting. There's some places in the state where yet, and this kind of old timber style construction and the train going by.
It's real idiomatic. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a really nice building, office, everything.
Yeah.
Most spaces aren't this aesthetic like this. Yeah. Also, just seeing this many people come to a meetup like this is heartening after the pandemic. Yeah. Yeah. What kind of, do you still do consulting or?
Yeah, I have my little company. Cool. We build software for academic research.
Oh, like what kind?
It's for in behavioral sciences, so both mental health and physical health.
Sure.
Improving outcomes for cancer patients and other patients with behavior change.
Interesting.
So that's what we're just providing software to empower the researchers. These are usually NIH funded kind of projects. So
Great.
Well, I've only been doing it for 5 years.
Nice. And it's a Ruby shop, I take it?
It's just, yeah, it's me. We're down to me and just 2 people.
Cool.
But it's like because the NIH cuts. But
yeah. Oh God, don't tell me about it.
It's been
yeah, I know a lot of people in academia. It's really bad.
Okay.
Sciences
Chuck
are.
Lee, by the way.
Hey, Dan.
Chuck Cohen.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe after today, I should interview you a little bit.
Sure.
About your knowledge and whatever you.
I'm a recovering academic, so yeah, I got out while I still had my soul. Oh, nice.
So,
oh, cool. All right. Computer science there? Cool. Okay, great. Yeah, in chat. I'm coming. I do. Sorry. Do you want it?
No.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Thanks. Hi. Thanks. Thanks for having me. This is last minute talks. If someone dropped out, so bear with me. I'm gonna go get those people in shape back there. Okay. One sec. Noah, maybe. We'll see. What's this? Okay. Yeah, great. I guess I'll sit since I'm kind of like in a living room here. So, yeah, thanks for having me. This is super last minute, but I thought I could recycle the talk. Yeah, we're gonna be talking about sandboxes, a la AI. I'm not sure if people have heard of that recently, and Ruby, of course. So, yeah, my name's Dan. Dan Phillips. D_Phila is like my handle that I use for most places online. I'm a systems engineer, work in a lot of R&D stuff around infrastructure and virtualization, but I started my career as a Ruby developer and a Ruby on Rails developer for several years doing product stuff in the mid-2010s. And now I do a few different things. I work on this project called Boxer.dev. I also am heavily involved in a few standards committees. I'm on the W3C standards group for WebAssembly, the core specification, and also WASI, the WebAssembly Systems Interface subgroup and community group. So I do a lot of work there. Also with the Bytecode Alliance, which is like an associated group. I live in Chicago, and I run a couple meetups. Not really run, I like help facilitate a few. One that I started though is the WASI Chicago meetup. Got really interested in WebAssembly like in 2018. 19, and right around the pandemic we started a meetup, and it's wasimchicago.org. So come check it out if you're interested in WebAssembly more, or if you want to speak, of course. And a friend and I are starting a new group inspired by some friends we have in San Francisco and Berlin and New York called the Chicago Systems Group, which is a systems engineering group. So a lot of stuff around low-level work, operating systems, database internals, things like that. This is just getting started, but both of these, Shy Systems has like a sign up page if you want to get updates about when we're going to have our first meetup. It should be this fall sometime. Cool. Okay. So agents, let me guess, who uses agents, like AI agents? Everyone, every day, all the time, right? Okay, good. All right. So what do they need? I mean, it's kind of a broad question, but specifically, a couple of hints here. A lot of people talk about agents. They need sandboxes, right? People talk about sandboxing with agents for a lot of reasons, but this particular abstraction has jumped back into the consciousness recently, which I find it hilarious that it's like a child's play toy thing and we're using it for professional work. It's just a really great kind of analogy. So why do we need agents now? Okay, so there's an explosion of agent runtimes. Putting aside how we actually define what an agent is, there are coding agents everywhere. We have agents and sub-agents running sub-agents and agents spawning agents. And we have agents running all night. I was just talking to Matt saying that he has his agents run all night and then checks in the morning. Yeah. And like I do the same thing in my own way. And we've just got these things running everywhere and they are non-deterministic by nature, right? So because of that, for those of us that work in infrastructure, the cloud per se, is shifting kind of beneath us, right? What will become cloud infrastructure will likely change dramatically in the next 1 to 3 to 5 years, if it hasn't already changed already. Curious about that. Here, how many people work here again? Cool. What kind of, you guys use like AWS or containers, Kubernetes, stuff like that? Who's used containers? Everyone's used containers, basically the whole world. Okay, cool. Great. So agents need execution. They don't just think, right? Or they do, but they also run code. They need isolation. But what exactly needs isolation specifically? Where do sandboxes fit? Untrusted code execution is a huge one, right? We've all heard of these horror stories. There was just the really infamous one with Hugging Face and OpenAI. Also the fun one where like some guy got his gym reservation like by hacking the thing in Australia. Really fun things. Maybe we want to make them more deterministic and we want to have proven isolation. And maybe we need to think about what a core primitive for agents could be. And also, what do agents produce? So you have like the work that the agent is doing, and oh, hey, by the way, what it produces also needs to be safe and secure when it's run, which hasn't changed, regardless of who or what is writing the code. And there's more. There's all sorts of other training that needs. There's also all sorts of other things that need sandboxes and isolation, like training, like RL training, like different variations of traditional training, neural nets, just like basic things that require sandbox isolation so that there aren't environment problems just from a very fundamental level. So we've been here before, right? Before I jump too deeply into this, has anyone built anything with WebAssembly here? Excellent, perfect. Yeah, okay, we got a half and half. Okay, great. So, but people know what it is. People have heard of it at least. Great, that's getting better every year. Okay, good. So I'm going to take a little journey. So this talk I recycled from a WebAssembly conference, so I didn't like talk about what WASM actually is there, but I'm going to talk about it right now. So WebAssembly, the biggest thing about WebAssembly is that it's sandboxed by default. Okay, so at its lowest level, it is sandbox execution that far exceeds a lot of the core sort of values that we see in traditional execution on native platforms. So what does that mean? We think about things like processes and isolation at the Unix process level, or we think about isolation with hardware, or we think about micro VMs, or we think about containers, which like people assume does isolation, but doesn't do it in quite the same way that a lot of these other primitives do. WebAssembly at the lowest level is isolated in a few really unique and strong ways, actually. Capability-based design is sort of baked into the design of WASM. Instead of having to hide the entire world from a process or from a container, you don't, if you're a WASM module, you don't know about the world unless you're explicitly given it and exported and imported things to and from the boundary of your execution layer. Portable isolation. WebAssembly started, let's see, the first spec came out in 2017. Yeah, 15, 17, somewhere around there. It was for the web, right? First came out for the web. And the idea is that just like JavaScript, which is the most battle-hardened interpreted language on Earth, it needs to be run on billions of devices safely. So if you want more information about what it is, you can check out the landing page for the core spec. Really interesting stuff. But at a high level, you can take any language and you can compile it to WASM theoretically, okay? Whether you can compile every language that exists right now to WASM and it'll all work with fidelity is still an open question, but a lot of people are working on it, including myself and several other people in the space, right? But these languages, for sure, you can compile to WASM, even the ones that are grayed out. Swift, you definitely can now. This is like a little outdated. But it's a new compilation target. So just like you compile things to x86 or ARM, you compile something to WASM. It is, for all intents and purposes, a virtualized CPU, right? The only difference is that you need a engine or a runtime to execute it. That doesn't mean that it's interpreted, though, necessarily. It doesn't necessarily have to be interpreted. This is a tweet that I tweeted in 2022 that Brendan Eich retweeted, if you know who Brendan Eich is. And Brendan Eich is the guy that created JavaScript at Mozilla in like 10 days or whatever. And he was around at the beginnings of WebAssembly. And I'm just doing this because I'm just showing you this because this was the peak of my social media career. And this kind of gets at it though, right? Is like, eventually, you could have something like any language compiled to WASM, and it could run right now. It can run on the front end, back end, mobile apps, desktop apps, machine learning, all these things. All these things happen now. If you've ever used Figma, if you've ever used Google Sheets, if you've ever used Google Maps, you're using WebAssembly. Lots of other consumer products use WASM in really specific nooks and crannies that it's extremely good at certain things, but there hasn't been kind of a wide scale adoption yet. Right? So is it a client-side only technology, right? This is an interesting point. A safe sandbox execution environment that makes no assumption about language or host. There are cold start times, which if you compare to most people are Ruby devs here, if we have container images of a Ruby on Rails project, we're looking at a pretty chunky container image, right? Compare that with startup time of nano and microseconds compared to seconds, right? It was the same when I was working in a Ruby shop in like 2017. And it's a universal compilation target. So in the specification, this is kind of a joke in the WebAssembly community. WASM there's nothing about WebAssembly in the spec that relates to the web, nor does it really relate to assembly. So it's neither web nor assembly specifically. Server-side WebAssembly. This has been a relatively recent development. And maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, a lot of VCs got really excited about this. And I kind of refer to it as cloud infrastructure's penicillin moment, where they kind of, someone made WebAssembly and then someone else looked at it and squinted and said, oh, that's interesting. We could use that for something else, right? Kind of like the discovery of penicillin. And it kind of took off from there. If you think about a natural progression of the industry going from VMs to containers, then the next wave is WASM. There have been a lot of people, including people that I work with, that have tried to make this happen in the last 5 years. Some companies that have done this pretty well are like Fastly, it's a big one, Mozilla, Google, Cosmonic, Fermion. These are all companies that have invested heavily in this. In particular, that really got the VCs going was this tweet by Solomon Hykes, who's the guy that created Docker. And he said in 2008, we wouldn't have needed to make Docker if WASM had been around. So kind of an interesting point. He later kind of walked us back and was like, no, I didn't mean like you guys thought I meant. And now actually Docker has a lot of stuff with WASM, and you can do stuff in containerd with WASM, and there's a whole lot of stuff. It's not really a competing technology at the moment. So yeah. So when we think about agents and we think about sandboxes, why wouldn't people think about WASM? Can I ask you, the guy who said you kind of did the halfway WASM project? Can I ask you, like, if it was easy to use or what you felt it was like, or? Yeah. Sick. Cool. Right on. Yeah, I mean, so like up until a few years ago, the experience of writing WebAssembly and using it, basically you had to use Rust first. A lot of the core team who started on the WASM spec was also the Rust team at the time of its inception back at Mozilla. A lot of those people now work at Fastly. And so a lot of the sort of like language and dialect you'll notice from the Rust world that kind of translated into what is the WASM space now. But to do WebAssembly up until really just a few years ago, you were doing things like passing pointers across boundaries and marshaling and unmarshaling raw data, and things that Ruby developers and JavaScript developers don't have to do a lot, right? Unless you really, really want to. And I promise I will talk about Ruby soon here. So yeah, there's a lot of work that went into it. It's a really low-level primitive, and there hasn't been a lot of tooling that's been built out on top of it. The people that had the most success with it were people that took old C and C++ projects like Figma, and that made them competitive with their shaders to have like online-based solutions that were competitive with Photoshop. But that took like years of investment back at that point in 2017, 2018. So a lot of sandboxing companies, though, there's a lot of sandboxing companies that are using sandboxes. They're not really using WebAssembly right now. It's kind of like a parallel ecosystem forming. A lot of people are using, I'm sorry, I said we, this is a WASM conference that I took this slide from. A lot of ecosystems are kind of forming in parallel. Most places are using things like micro VMs, containers, hardened containers, Kata containers, which are like VMs that are shaped like containers. gvisor, which is like a thing that Google made to kind of wrap container runtimes to make them more secure. There's even more, right? Firecracker, which is the same thing that AWS made for booting up their stuff in Lambda really fast. And then unikernels and microkernels. All this stuff is very POSIX-y, right? So like stuff that's based on Unix. WebAssembly is just the CPU. It doesn't know anything about POSIX, file descriptors, sockets, anything. That all needs to be invented. And taking just like the raw Linux kernel or taking other like old POSIX resources, bringing it to WebAssembly is not as straightforward as it sounds because people have tried, and we can kind of talk through those different examples. The problem with containers and the problem with things like VMs and hypervisors to a certain extent is containers, they share the same kernel, right? I'm not sure if anyone is really into security here, if we have any security-ish people, but like these new agents are really, really good at finding and implementing CVEs. like they don't if you looked at that video of OpenAI talking about the Hugging Face incident, it was like layer upon layer upon layer of exploitations that the agent just like did in a couple days that like were like extremely complex that allowed them to escape the sandbox that they were running in, right? That's all because of the sort of assumption around different security practices like ambient authority and all these things that are baked into what we do when we jump on any Unix or POSIX-based system now, right? Container runtimes are another layer on top of that of massive complexity. If you've ever looked at like the container runtime interface, the networking interface, how Kubernetes works under the hood, like this stuff, it's extremely complex. And remember, this was pre-AI that this stuff was built by a lot of really smart people, but still like the number of security problems that we found even before AI is just gonna be compounded upon by the new technology that we have. So yeah, heavy runtime layers, and then there's orchestration complexity. I don't know, you guys use Kubernetes at scale here, like large scale Kubernetes or other Nomad, anything? What do you guys use for orchestration? Just curious. Anyway. No, okay, I'll stick to the info people and come back later. So yeah, there's a lot of complexity, and that's kind of my point here. Yeah, talked about this. So complexity with how we deploy programs now is expensive on a lot of different fronts, right? There's a large surface area for attacks. It's hard to reason about large systems, even with the AI technology that we have, even though maybe it's getting better. Things are slow to start, literally. I remember we had a Ruby service at one company I worked at that literally took 45 seconds to boot because it was so big. And there's a lot of companies like old Java shops that just like stuck giant Java monsters into containers. And, we're interested in the whole microservice pattern in the 2010s, but then they just have these monstrosities that are really slow and really complex, right? In a virtualization layer that's on top of a huge amount of underlying machinery. So what does WebAssembly do differently? WebAssembly starts with nothing, and then you have to build it from there, okay? And that's skipping a whole bunch of details. But what that means is that there's no shared kernel, right? There's a memory model that is basically like, ooh, are you okay? Okay. The memory model in WebAssembly effectively boils down to every process, what could be considered analogous to a process, has its own memory space, and not just an allocation. It can't know about any memory space outside of that memory space that each individual process or nanoprocessor instance is given. And then there are explicit imports and exports. On top of that, it's a Harvard architecture, which if there are any CPU nerds in here, that means that the data and the code is in separate places, right? Which means that you can't do things like find a function by unaddressed and then try to execute it, which is how like 30% of all exploits work on POSIX-based systems, right? And there's more, which I'm not going to get into yet, but that's the high level. So WASM from the most fundamental level takes a different approach. Deny by default isolation, talks about that. Deterministic, yes. WebAssembly is inherently single-threaded. Remember, it was built for the web. It was built to work nicely with JavaScript, but to also work at a consistent speed. That was actually the most important thing when they were developing WASM. There are only two languages that you can execute in a browser, which is JavaScript and or WebAssembly at this point. WebAssembly came from a thing called ASM.js, ASM.js, which was a subset of JavaScript, which compiler toolchains allowed you to take C and C++ and compile it to extremely predictably performance JavaScript, which these JavaScript engines themselves are written in C or C++ typically, right? And so this is the sort of evolution of that. So it started out as a single-threaded, but now in 2026, you're finally getting shared everything threads, cooperative multi-threading, and things like that. So you can do threaded work, which is very important for a lot of languages in WebAssembly. And it's got a tiny runtime. The entire specification is 2 pages. right? Which is interesting. So what I like to say is, and I'll get to the real stuff here and Ruby, I also promise, and I won't take too long. WebAssembly is basically safer, smaller, faster, and more universal. And it's also composable. So people haven't used WebAssembly to this point because it's annoying to use. People feel like they did it wrong. Like my guy over here, it's the same thing. Like when I first came to it, I was like, why? So first of all, when I was a Ruby developer, I was not a huge fan of doing front-end work at the time. It was also like in the heyday of React getting really like starting and getting popular. And I found out about WebAssembly and I was like, oh, this is great. I never have to write JavaScript again. I could just use this on the web. And then I looked into it and I realized, oh, no one's using this because it's really hard to use, right? And you have to use Rust or tool chains that I don't understand to use it. The tooling is still developing, and there's kind of still like a mental model gap of how it works, right? So, yeah, kind of like what I just said. The big thing is that when you shove things into a container, containers just work, right? You can just put an app inside a container and you can say from this, do this, copy this, and then boom, it just works and like works on my machine. Doesn't matter anymore. You know, you can like have it and then you can push that to a cloud. You know, back in the day, you could just like plug that into Vercel's little button and then, or it was called Zeit or whatever. And like it would just go off and now you have fly.io like here in Chicago. And all these people doing stuff with containers and it kind of just works. And the beauty of that is that you don't have to understand the underlying implementation. And WebAssembly is not there yet, but I hope that we will be soon. And that's part of the work that I've been doing with some of my projects. And one of those is Boxer. So Boxer kind of it kind of attempts to bridge that gap. And it actually takes as a first primitive, you can take a Docker file and it will turn that Docker file into a WebAssembly primitive or a set of primitives. And then you can run that WebAssembly on different runtimes and across hosts with also plugins and with definitely more than a few caveats at the moment. So this is the project. You can check it out if you want. I've been working on this off and on for 4 years, and it's not my full-time thing, but it's something that I'm still kind of passionate about. And one day when I have free time, I will finish it. So what does that mean? This means that we can remove friction, we can unlock adaption, and it kind of gives you a picture of something like this. Like if the shipping container is a traditional container, the size scale roughly is something like this, right? And ironically, the box with the app in it is safer and faster on all accounts than the actual shipping container. So this isn't a perfect allegory, but it comes close, right? So just to review before I jump into what this means for Ruby, containers, VMs, they're great for apps. You have container runtimes. You've got a lot of different things that have a large attack surface. It's historical. We're going to have a lot of CVEs that still come up. We're just now discovering what these agents can do. And that's because the fundamentals of these technologies have large gaps in them that allow for these types of attacks. And it's going to be like a huge game of cat and mouse. And in the future, when we have more and more people who maybe know less and less about how the underlying code is being run, we'll need even better security, right? And so with something like WebAssembly, we start from a very limited set of resources, and then we build on top of that. And then we can virtualize those other platform layers that we're used to in places like operating systems and container runtimes. And that can even go down to the hardware. So you can even combine that with hardware capabilities like Cherry and some of these other interesting things that chip companies are doing and have extremely quick, extremely dense compute that can run anywhere. And that, in my opinion, I hope will be the sort of future of software infrastructure. So what does this mean for Ruby? Yeah, good question. So I think that Ruby is a particular challenge. Has anyone had the fun pleasure of building Ruby from source? Yeah, okay, yeah. So it takes like a few hours. Yeah. So the Ruby runtime is immense, especially now. And there are so many different levels to so many things. And it's obviously there's history involved. So I particularly really wanted to help push forward Ruby with WebAssembly. This is me with my friend who is the only Ruby core developer who has added WebAssembly stuff to Ruby core. And he has worked tirelessly. His name's Yuta Saito, and he and I have kind of talked about strategies for how to work with Ruby. And so right now, basically, just to back up a second, you can do Ruby on WebAssembly. There's some really cool resources for it. Anyone know Evil Martians, the people? Okay. So, and then, yeah, SF Ruby, she's going to organize this arena. Yeah. They've done some awesome stuff with Ruby and WASM. There's like, oh no. Let's see, there's this. They got this guy, runruby.dev, which is like literally executing WebAssembly in the browser. And they've done a bunch of other cool stuff around like running Rails in the browser. But it's not just a gimmick, right? So you can take this and then you can run your Rails application in something that is like a Rails container that would be 100 megabytes, might be 4 megabytes in WebAssembly. The same exact application, the same exact executable, all these different things. And so my point here is that there are some challenges. Some of the bigger ones are threading. That's a big one. Some of the other things are how networking works, but then also things like garbage collection, right? WebAssembly is a runtime. And if you think about Ruby being interpreted, or even there's specialized like JIT interpreters, and then there's also things like Sorbet and all these other things that build on top of this, building that interpreter and then that GC model over something. WebAssembly is actually, it just introduced its own generic GC model. And so matching up data types across these boundaries is an extremely challenging technical thing. But people like Yuta are working on it, and there's definitely some hope there. So ballpark it, you can run like 80%, 90% of things in Ruby on WebAssembly if you so choose, right? People always ask about performance with optimizations. You could look at maybe like a 1.2, 1.7 x slowdown compared to running Ruby natively. That's a really broad number. There's a lot of things that you can do. Like I said, WebAssembly doesn't have to be interpreted, which neither does Ruby in many cases. And so you can do a lot of things to speed things up. So yeah, this is just the beginning. So cloud primitives, instead of containers, instead of VMs, we have this new primitive that gives us all this new incredible possibility. And I think that there's a very good argument to be made that WebAssembly and the tooling around it could become like the default. Composability, has anyone heard of like Plan 9 operating system? Yeah, okay, cool. So like, yeah, I mean, the Unix idea of do one thing and do one thing well and then compose, like that is actually a sort of like fundamental aspect of what people are doing with the WebAssembly system interface, so WASI. And there's this idea of the component model, which is sort of being explored there. That's a whole other can of worms, but that's all built on WebAssembly itself. And yeah, at the end of the day, it's smaller, safer, faster, and it's universal. So what that can mean is some really cool things. This is what a group of my friends are working on at Cosmonic. And I'm working on this too. So at Cosmonic, we're doing this stuff that is like WebAssembly tooling with practical application. So if you check this out, if you want to check out this cool new distributed system beta, be an alpha user, this is the thing where you can run WebAssembly locally. You can run components locally, meaning you could run things like you would run in containers, but they would be faster, more dense, cheaper by orders of magnitude. And you could do interesting things like I was talking to Matt about this. You could instantly be having something running, and while it's running, instead of closing your laptop to stop the agent, it magically migrates to the cloud and is running in the cloud in that safe environment in the same spot. And then that cloud can migrate across underlying hosts. Then you can even open it back up in your browser, and it's running in your browser, and it's the same exact execution. It's the same exact isomorphic code. If anyone was around at the beginning of Node.js, there was all this interesting stuff about isomorphic JavaScript. People talked about that. Whether or not that actually came to fruition is debatable. Yeah, this actually is the same code running everywhere, and you can prove it. So WebAssembly runtimes, if they're spec compliant, it's the same code. And so we're exploring this at Cosmonic. If you want to try this out, this embeds some other agents and stuff, but it's the safest way to run things locally and across clouds. So yeah, if you're curious, check that out. And yeah, if you have other questions about this, I obviously love to talk about this. I could continue for hours, but I'll stop. This has been really fun. Yeah, online I'm Bufilla, and if you're interested in coming to these other groups, I would love to chat. So yeah, thank you very much.
Plenty of time for questions. Anyone have questions?
Yeah.
Like I use VMs for my
Yep.
entire work. What I have is like a suite of free Rails apps, you know, a browser that I've got to go to, maybe an MCP tool. How do you see WebAssembly working with something like that? Because I can't compile all of that into one big WebAssembly.
Yeah, totally. Well, so unfortunately, like theoretically you could, but it's not a good idea, right? The WebAssembly would be more like a more pure implementation of what microservices want it to be, right? So if you're around for like the microservice when everything was a microservice and Uber got really popular with it, like that the underlying primitive there was containers and pods, which container is really just this sort of like glorified process with a whole bunch of problems and wrapped in C groups and namespaces and all the stuff in the kernel that's complex. This using WebAssembly as a primitive for microservices is a much, much better approach. I mean, it's orders of magnitude cheaper, it's safer in so many different ways, it's universal, all the stuff I just tried to say with my marketing terms, right? So in that setting, it would be like basically like the simplest thing would be like replacing your server-side services with that. And then MCP is an excellent example because some of the easiest, cheapest, most universal MCP sandboxing is with WASM providers for sure. And actually, with this project I just showed, this has MCP sandboxing and WASM out of the box. So, yeah, yeah. When it comes to like things that will involve UIs, it's like that's so like everyone always wonders like why WebAssembly hasn't been given direct access to the DOM in browsers, and that's because like the optimizations that have gone into how JavaScript implements the DOM are extremely good and fast now, right? They're so good and fast, and you have to use them anyway. It doesn't like WebAssembly is just a binary format. That's all it is, right? It's a series of instructions. It's an abstract stack model, like, and so that literally just like pops and pushes things to and from the stack and computes things, right? So adding like UI elements to that would just be a whole can of worms that's already solved really well with that. So that being said, there are these like full stack WebAssembly first frameworks. They're like Rust. They came out of the Rust community. But like there's also one for C#, which is a really popular. Blazor, C#. Blazor is a huge one. This is really popular for enterprise C# companies because it saves them tons of money to just run things in WebAssembly on the web instead of having to use JavaScript and things like that. Further, the Graal VM team with a friend of mine just finished working on basically being able to run the JVM, which is what runs Java applications, inside WebAssembly. So you can take JVM applications, which by the way, a lot of people who were around during the JVM years kind of look at WebAssembly and they're like, hey, that looks like the JVM. Write once, run everywhere. What do you know? And it's like the joke then became write once, debug everywhere, right? So there are some inspirational elements to the JVM with WASM, but it is much, 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 much better implemented. It's also open source, fully open, and governed by a foundation, and part of the W3C standard, and it's not, Oracle. And so yeah, sorry to blab on. Anyone else? Cool. Well, thanks again. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Kevin just messaged saying that Rocky Mountain Ruby is also coming up in September 28th through 29th. You might recognize one of the speakers. It is he. So check that out if you're going to be in that area. Other than that, we'll see you next month, September 9th, Wednesday. Well, yes, September 9th.
I hope so.
Yeah, at Beyond Finance. Yes, September 9th. Yeah, Tess will be in town. Chris will be remote. Yeah, yeah, great meeting. Thank you. Yeah. Dan.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, that's awesome.